What's up, everybody? How you doing? This video, we're going to talk more about coaching. We're going to talk about coaches in the NFL, and I know some people are sick of talking about it. I know some people are sick of hearing about it, but I don't care. I don't care because as far as I'm concerned, this is the thing that matters. This is maybe the only thing that matters, but it's certainly the thing that matters more than anything else. Like, I don't really care how high our draft pick gets. I don't really care what players we're going to get rid of or what players we're going to add this offseason. Like, that stuff does matter on some level, but this is the thing that I really care about right now. Coaches. I want to talk more about Pete Carroll. I want to talk more about the possibility of replacing him now or later. And I want to talk about this because the NFL has changed dramatically over the last, I would say, 30 years. Once upon a time, I'd say in the 90s, maybe even the early 00s, there were a handful of good coaches in the NFL. And either you had one of those good coaches and you were good, or you didn't and you were screwed because there was nothing you could do because it was really hard to find a good head coach. You would try to hire assistants, you would try to hire guys from college, you would try to hire former players, and most of the time it didn't really work out. So, if you were one of the lucky teams to have a proven good head coach, then you were just good. And the only way to get one of those good proven head coaches was to trade for him or sign him after they resign from their position with one team and go to another. That's how we got Mike Holmgren. And that's kind of all there was to it. It was really hard to will a good head coach out of the ether. It was go get one of the proven guys, or you're just going to have to try to win without a good head coach. Nowadays, it doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. And I talked about this a little bit with the Hawks Nest on stream a couple of days ago, but I really want to hammer this point because it highlights something that I think is very important to keep in mind when we have these Pete Carroll conversations right now. I don't think it would be that hard to replace Pete Carroll. I think that there's some risk involved in trying to do it. But I fully believe that you would have a very good chance of getting somebody better than Pete Carroll if you moved to replace him. You would have to go about the process in the right way. You would have to make a good decision, and it's possible you wouldn't get it right the first time, but I do think that it would not be that hard to find somebody better because I look around the NFL right now and it is getting populated very quickly with young head coaches who had no prior experience. So I want to look at the last 4 seasons especially and talk about some of the coaches that have been hired who had no previous NFL head coaching experience. These are guys who were assistants. Maybe one or two of them were from straight from college. I'm not 100% sure. I think most of these guys got their start as assistants and worked their way up the ranks. But the point is, these guys had never been NFL head coaches before they had been hired by whatever team currently still has them as of right now. So we've got a collection of, I believe, 9 guys that I want to highlight in the last 4 years. Let's start with the most recent guys because there were 3 guys that I need to highlight from the most recent coaching class. Shane Steichen, he was a longtime assistant for, I know he was with the Chargers for a little bit. I think he was with Philly for a little bit. I'm not 100% sure where his tree runs, but he got hired by the Colts, and he's turned around one of the worst teams in the league from last year, made them a winning team, a team that may make the playoffs, and he's doing it mostly with a backup quarterback. So I think that so far we can safely say that Steichen has proven to be, at the very least, the initial returns are good. Like, this is a pretty good head coach so far. You've got D'Amico Ryans. This is his first year in Houston, and it's going really well too. He takes over one of the worst teams in the league, and he's got them at a winning record, 7-6. They've got a rookie quarterback in there. They've got a lot of young players. They're leaning heavily on their rookie class. This was a team that was awful last year, and he's got them in the playoff race in the AFC. So that's another head coach that's so far so good. I understand that it can burn out. I understand that we might be having this conversation in 2 years and he's on the verge of getting canned. But as of right now, he looks like he's good. And this last one, I don't know if we can really say this guy's good or not. But I'm impressed, honestly. Maybe I just had really low expectations. But Jonathan Gannon, I think, has done a fairly good job with the Arizona Cardinals so far. That is a team devoid of talent. That is a team with very little going for it. They were basically throwing this season away, and everybody knew it. And he has them competitive in most games. Now, 3-10 is not good, but to me, Jonathan Gannon has already shown he might actually be pretty good. Now, we're going to need more time to figure that out. But if I'm a Cardinals fan, I'm feeling better about my team's future than I thought I did going into the season. I'll just put it like that. I'm not going to tell you that Jonathan Gannon's a better head coach than Pete Carroll, but I am saying there is some promise here, and there's a very good chance I think that Jonathan Gannon is just ends up being a good coach. So that's three guys just this most recent offseason who are at the very least off to, I'll say, interesting starts, but two of them are just straight up good. Okay, let's go the previous year, 2022. Let's take a look at another three coaches that got hired that offseason that so far have been good. Mike McDaniel, the Miami Dolphins head coach. He gets hired, San Fran assistant, immediately takes Miami to 9 wins and a postseason berth. And this year, they're playing even better. They've got 9 wins already. They're probably going to win that division. Things are going really well for the Fish. And I think we can safely conclude that while Mike McDaniel is going to have to prove himself over a longer period of time, he's off to a good start. He's off to a really, really promising first couple of years. And this seems like a guy who, at least for now, is a good coach. So I'm going to call that another feather in the cap of this idea of promoting assistants to be your head coach. This is not the 90s. This is not the 80s. This is not the era of either you have it or you don't. This is the era of you need to go out and try to find it from somebody who hasn't shown it yet because they haven't had their chance. Kevin O'Connell. Here's another one. This is a really good one, actually. He took a Vikings team that was barely average last year. Like, if you look at that roster and you look at the way they played, they were a pretty average team to 13 wins. That Vikings team had no business winning 13 games, and Kevin O'Connell got the best out of them, getting them to 13 wins. And this year, he has them at a winning record, even though he lost his quarterback to an Achilles tear. And even when they had that quarterback, it's not like they were setting the world on fire and they're coasting on that. They've actually been winning games with backups. They've been winning games with guys that they pick up a couple days before the game starts. So, Kevin O'Connell seems like he's a good coach so far. Again, these guys are going to have to prove themselves over a longer time period. But we can at the very least say that these guys, with the possible exception of Jonathan Gannon, are off to good starts. And I'm going to throw Brian Daboll in here as well. I think it's Daboll. He won Coach of the Year last year. He was one of the best coaches last season. I know the Giants only won 9 games, but that was way above expectations. They made the playoffs. They won a playoff game. They played way over their heads. Everybody agreed that Daboll was doing really, really well with the Giants. Now this year hasn't gone very well, but there have been a lot of injuries. He lost his quarterback. He lost his backup quarterback. He's now won 3 straight games with Tommy DeVito at quarterback. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Brian Daboll is good. I'm going to go ahead and just say that it seems like he's good. I know that the results are not stellar the way that Kevin O'Connell's results are, but I feel like this is a good coach. I feel pretty good about that. And this is another guy. Came up in the ranks as an assistant and eventually got his shot. And look at him. All right, now let's go to the previous year, 2021. We've got Nick Sirianni, the big one. This is the Grand Poobah. He takes over a Philly team that was one of the worst teams in the league in 2020. 2021, he takes over this team that has no cap space because of the Carson Wentz trade. They're rolling it over, they're rebuilding, and he leads them to 9 wins in the playoffs. He actually gets something really good out of that team despite everything working against them. He got them to a winning record and got them to the playoffs. And then the next year, 14 wins and the Super Bowl. So Nick Sirianni looks like he's a really good coach. Looks like he's a very success. This year they're doing good too. Nick Sirianni looks like one of the best coaches in the NFL right now. And this is another guy who you didn't know if he could do it or not until you gave him the chance. Philly gave him the chance and they are reaping the rewards from it. Now, this next one, I don't know if this guy's actually good or not, admittedly. Robert Saleh. Hard to say. I think Saleh is good. I think Saleh is a good coach, and he just hasn't been given a quarterback. The results are bad. I got no problem admitting that. But he's always gotten his defenses ready to play at a very high level. He's gotten a lot out of a little, in my opinion. It's not his fault. He's been cursed with the worst QB play in the entire league across the 3 seasons he's been there. So to me, Saleh is a good coach, and this is another example of an assistant working his way up and becoming a good NFL head coach. If you don't agree, I completely understand. Some people are going to say, how can you say he's good when he's 16-31? 16-31 is pretty fair when you've got Zach Wilson as your quarterback for most of that time, I think. But some people disagree, that's fine. And finally, I want to go over the big hire from 2020, Kevin Stefanski, who won Coach of the Year as a rookie and has been by far the best Browns head coach since they came back into the NFL. So that first year, they go 11-5, make the playoffs, win a playoff game. It's the best Browns season in, almost 30 years? Now, the next 2 years are not great, but they're not bad either. The 2021, Baker Mayfield was injured and didn't play well at all. 2022, the Deshaun Watson thing happened, and both those years, he still had the team playing passably good football. They were okay these years. They were not terrible. They had every right to be terrible. They didn't have a quarterback either year, and yet here they are. And this year, 2023, he still doesn't have a quarterback. He has 4 different quarterbacks starting games for him, and he's 8-5, probably going to make the playoffs. Probably should win another Coach of the Year this year if they do make the playoffs. Yeah, Kevin Stefanski's good. I know the record's just okay, but he's definitely good. And I didn't even bring up Dan Campbell in this video because technically Dan Campbell was the interim head coach for Miami for 12 games, I think, at the end of one of his the seasons where they fired their head coach. I think it was like 2015 or something. So I didn't include Dan Campbell, but if you want to throw him in there because he was just an interim head coach, yeah, he got hired in right before 2021, and since then Detroit's had a slow but eventual turnaround to where they are now, probably going to win that division, making the playoffs. We'll see what they do when they get there. But bottom line is this, that's if you do include Dan Campbell, this is 10 of 32 coaches in the NFL right now. So what I'm trying to get at here is every offseason, new capable head coaches sprout up out of the ground. You don't have to retread old successful coaches. You don't need to pick up the phone and dial up Tony Dungy or Bill Cowher or Mike Holmgren or Bill Parcells and be like, hey, how much money would it take for you to come out of retirement to coach my team? You don't have to do that anymore. If that was the climate where the only options were like really old retreads, then I think keeping Pete Carroll would actually make some sense. At least you know that he has done it before, and betting on him to be able to do it again is probably a better bet than winning the lottery with some assistant. But looking at the way the NFL is going right now, where these assistants that in many cases are not even well known, like a lot of these guys were not well known by the NFL world until they were hired as head coaches, and then they just hit the ground running. Like a couple of these guys won Coach of the Year. A bunch of them made the playoffs or may make the playoffs in their first year as coach. So I don't really know what I'm supposed to be afraid of here. I don't know why I'm supposed to believe that we should keep Carroll because the other side is so terrifying. I'm not seeing any reason to be scared here. These are good coaches by and large. Yes, there are bad ones too. There are your Joe Judges. There's your Nathaniel Hackett's. There are, God, what was the name of the, to a certain extent, maybe you could say Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah, those guys, they flame out quickly, and some of them are never good in the first place. But I'm seeing a lot of potential upside here. This is, to me, the opposite of the Geno Smith thing, where it's not easy to replace him. I don't think it would be hard to replace Pete Carroll at all. You'd lose some stuff, but the stuff you would gain, I really do think, would outweigh it, especially with the way things are going right now. Let me know what you think down below. I'm going to get out of here. Peace out. Go Hawks. I'm just trying to present things the way I see it. So let me know if it resonates with you at all. See you guys later.